So the Chicago Bears offense has a guest quarterback, one of the Vikings, unnumbered because he's too embarrassed to be out with the Bears. He's going to show a little bit of what's called misdirection. A limited formation here. I'm not showing the receivers and all that because that's really not the purpose of this. What I'm showing is the offensive line, a defensive line, and I've got this looper or blitzer trying to go attack this quarterback. The quarterback appears to be aiming this way, but looky what happens when we turn it on. You know, that'd be pretty lame if that's the misdirection that I had. Obviously, the looper on this side, if I set him up like this, the blitzers are just going to go here and problem solved. Well, suppose... Now, you're not allowed to, in a tournament, you're not allowed to take the base off the player, but you can... Whoa, check that out. So now, this guy is saying, all right, this guy, he's a sitting duck, he's, I'm this fast, he's that fast, I'm going to hit him right here. Well, guess what happens? Wrong-o. So what I did here was, okay, now since I'm not in a tournament, took the base off. All I did here was I took a small drill bit and I drilled through this guy's heel, and I put in a little nail, and I've actually got a little piece of double stick tape here. Here's a nail, and basically it goes right in through here, and I put the nail right in the center. Pretty much looks the same whether he's like this or whether he's like this. One of the tricks is, this is maybe not the ideal base, although it's not terrible. You don't want to have a base that's tilting up like this or back like that, because if it, if it stands forwards like this, then clearly it's moving this way, regardless which, it'd be real clear if the base were sitting like this, it'd be real clear which way the guy is going to go. But if you tweak your, again, the back prongs are a little bit longer, but they're curled more, so this base sits pretty flat. And it's really hard to tell which way this guy is going to go. I've tried doing this with dial bases. The problem with a dial base is, if I have it like this, it's pretty obvious which way the guy is going to go because the base is not symmetrical. The gear is a little bit towards one side or the other. So, and the other problem is putting the prongs like this all the way back doesn't really work because the back prongs, when they're tweaked, are angled back. These are going to be angled this way. So if you put him like this, he's just going to bounce around and do nothing. Whereas forwards, he'd actually move forwards. That's not a good choice. One choice you could take is what's called the gear base from ITZ. And this is meant to be deceptive and all that. If you put a gear base together the way you're supposed to have two little knobs and a cover over this. I find that the control is not really tight enough. So actually, so what I do is I just put the putty. You've seen this in the other videos. So if I want to move this guy, right now he's going to move this way. I see the way the prongs are. I can take my fingernail and move these prongs and reposition them. The problem with this approach is it takes too long. Each one of these you got to sit there and dig with your fingernail while the clock's counting down for you to set up your play. A standard base like this, which runs reasonably well. Now the idea is not to have this guy be, Adrian Peterson and zip around the sides. The idea is if this guy's got looper, if the defense has loopers zipping in like this, you get this guy out of the pocket one way or the other. You make it impossible for him to know which way you're going. You might have to put loopers both ways and waste the player for him. That's the advantage of this deception. Another approach, if you don't want to go drilling people's legs and putting nails in, another approach is to just make multiple figures that look like this. And you choose a base. In this case, I've chosen an ITZ dial base. This one happens to run forwards, but here's a base that configured the same way. I've got the prongs bent the other way, so this base moves backwards. So if I have two Fran Tarkenton figures mounted on, one goes forward, one goes backwards, setting them up like this in the backfield, where I'm trying to confuse the loopers. Setting them like this, depending on which base it is, as long as the figures are very close and the platform's painted the same and the bases look the same, you have no idea if he's going to shoot like this or like this. But the advantage to this is to have multiple guys. You don't have to have a guy just shoots out straight. You could have him be tweaked so he goes like this and then have the other guy go like this. And in fact, what you may want to do in that case is put the figure, make your quarterback figure so he's, lined up straight. So it looks better when he's running this way and this way. It's not, you don't have some guy running backwards. That doesn't look right. But like this, if you had two bases, one, this one happens to move this way, but if I had another base that went that way, this would be the ideal quarterback, but it takes a second guy. This solution is, obviously, it saves you one player on your roster because you got one guy that moves either way. This is actually a more flexible and more dangerous solution, like I said, because you can have very different base styles. Not only that, but if you were to choose the gear base as your base of choice, you could even have one of your options being a quarterback that moves, well, I got to weigh this guy up. Could conceivably have a quarterback like this that moves straight ahead. So he's not always running around the side. So if he's the only guy in the backfield, they may not put a defensive lineup. And that's where having a gear base that moves straight ahead would be a deadly weapon. The whole deception thing works for running backs and receivers as well. As long as you put them on a base that looks the same, you could have a fast, wobbly one. You could have a strong base. Maybe pull him in as a tight end if he's as strong as your offensive lineman. You could have the same running back. You could have this guy that curls this way. And next time you put him in, you line him up behind the quarterback. And this fellow, this time he curls this way. Next time you line him up behind the quarterback, the defense puts a guy out on this wing. You go this way and he zips around that way. If it's impossible to tell by looking at them, as long as you decal them the same and use obviously the same figure, that's a wonderful way to get yardage, because you'll really freak them out when they see the same guy going completely different directions.